Welcome everyone to another episode of Superheroes of Arabia podcast. Today, it's my huge honor to welcome not only the pride of our region, but also the pride of superhero community. I am with Mohamed Fareed, Movie Convo channel, the man who has been responsible for reviewing our favorite movies as well as our TV series. But more importantly, he makes sure that throughout his reviews, he does not leave out superhero movies. And kid you not, when he is reviewing superhero movies, whether we agree with him or we disagree with him, he takes a complete movie-centric approach in order to assess whether the movie is good or bad. So please join me in welcoming Movie Convo's Mohamed Fareed. Mohamed, thank you so much for joining.
Habibi, thank you so much. Actually, the pleasure is all mine. Again, it was lovely meeting you in Comic-Con Arabia and Jeddah. You are like an actual literal bro, like a brother. Thank you for having me here to discuss an interesting topic, which is comic book in general, whether movies, TV shows, or even comics. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
The pleasure is all mine, Mohamed, because you took out the time, and it shows that how much love you have for your fellow brother, but also for the community that loves superheroes. Not only from your content, but you basically took out the time to actually talk to us, of us.
Anytime, Habibi. The pleasure is all mine.
God bless you, man. Okay, Mohamed, here's the thing that right now people know you because of your very successful YouTube channel and the reviews that you are posting. But in this world, in this universe, everything has a beginning.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to ask, who is Mohamed Fareed?
Okay. Like generally speaking, whoa, that's a very tough question. Okay, I'll just tell you just now at the time being, I'm a dreamer, an aspiring filmmaker. Just one of my dreams is just to make a feature film and go global. And I know this might sound very far-fetched, but one of my dreams is just to win an Oscar for best director or best writer. I think it's time that, we Middle Eastern show the world our talent. And I know we get a bad rep for a lot of things, which I'm not going to get into, but it's just now at the time being, I'm a dreamer. I've always loved cinema. Growing up as a kid, imagine like you being 6 or 7 watching Terminator 2 with your dad, and he's just covering your eyes if there's any bad scene. Growing up watching Superman and Christopher Reeve, I cannot express the impact that movie had on my childhood. Just like I would find anything red, I would just tie it up here, and I would just try fly like Christopher Reeve, and so it just started like a film lover, generally speaking. I watch a lot of TV shows, and in social media, I don't know if I told this anyone before, I was actually gonna launch my channel in 2016.
Right.
Because I used just like quick story. I was a banker for 5 years. I did not love that job. I was miserable. Then I moved to Hong Kong, where I lived there. I was a university teacher, and I was gonna finish my studies and do a PhD thing. But then I had to come back home for family reasons. And then my cousin Rashid Al-Jodar, who was a social media influencer back then, and even now, but different content now. Yeah. And he says, "Hey, we finished Batman versus Superman, and we went to a coffee shop, and we were discussing Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, and how the movie impacted me. And I knew while watching it that the movie was cut. And I remember that film." Because of that film, my cousin told me, "You need to have a YouTube channel because the way you talk and express, it's very fluid." And we shot a video. We don't have the footage. Tried to find it because we erased everything. We shot an hour-long video where I expressed my love for Batman versus Superman, but that was the Ultimate Edition that came out a few months later, if you remember, on Blu-ray,
yes.
Which was half an hour longer.
Yes.
And I dissected the whole thing for an hour, 60 minutes, unedited. Even with me cursing and saying stuff unedited, but it was there. And then, and he said we should do this. And then we decided to go to Instagram, and then Instagram did happen a lot of things. And then we went to YouTube. So my cousin had a big push, or let's say he was a big factor of me joining social media. And through social media, I realized I met certain directors and writers, and I'm like, hey, Like I always loved movies, and in the back of my mind growing up, I was like, how do I become a director? How can I be a story writer? I didn't study anything, but through those people told me, hey, you don't have to, I mean, like, of course, if you can study, it'd be much better, but like information is online, information is available, information is on YouTube. So every time I had a free time, I would just watch certain videos for hours long. I would read articles. I even subscribed to a master class, if you heard about it, which is, and from there, things took off, and until I'm here now. And I have to emphasize, like, I think if anybody knows me, I'm a horror fan. I always support certain genres that they don't get much love, like, you know, superhero movies. I was a supporter way back in the day, but even as well horror films, I do support them. So long story short, here I am. Like, yeah.
Okay, it shows, because when you pursue something which you are most passionate about, I believe there is some kind of a hidden universal rule that you start getting unseen, intangible help that leads you to where you are. And having almost 250,000 subscribers, mashallah, on YouTube is not an easy task. I am a creator myself, and I know for a fact that what kind of a grueling experience you had to go through in order to create such a community. Now, okay, you have defined who is Mohamed Fareed. And like every other great creator story, he starts out with doing something he or she hates, and then finds something through someone or either by themselves, which they are most passionate about, and the rest is history. Now, you mentioned something really important. You mentioned 2 movies. Of all the movies that came along, Terminator 2, and before Terminator 2, Superman. Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner's.
Yes.
How old is Mohamed Fareed at that time that he became starstruck?
I think it was 1992, 6 or 1995. Either this or that, because my father is a movie buff. And back in the day, we had the Betamax, and then VHS, and then the VCD, and then so I remember watching it on Betamax, yes. And I remember like just like watching it all over again. And spoiler alert for the first Superman, like, you know, when he turns back time, he turns back Earth. And I remember like growing up, I was telling my dad, Baba, is that scientifically, like, is this true? And my dad says, no, it's not correct, but it is fun to watch. And I remember like, and everything turning, and it had that kind of impact for me, because, you know, like, generally speaking, like superheroes, why they're so appealing, because, and maybe nobody thought about that, is just we see part of ourselves in them that we know we cannot achieve fully, maybe physically, like, you know, Superman, like, you know, flying, being too strong, being hopeful. And you're saying, you know what, like, I mean, I'm not strong, I cannot fly, I can be hopeful, but like, I can see that hopeful part of me in Superman. Like, even like Blade, let's say, Blade is very violent and bloody. And I remember it was releasing in Bahrain. It had a lot of issues with the censorship. And I watched it on VHS.
Right.
And it's just, he had that kind of existential, like, you know, crisis and conflict with who he is, being half vampire, half human. And you would just, as a kid, try to find anything relatable. That's the impact it had on me. And, you know, funny mentioning Blade, I just watched Blade 1 and 2 on Netflix the other day. I missed them so much. And then the news came out that Blade, the new one with Disney, got postponed, unfortunately, because of the director leaving, which is wild. Like, yeah, anyway.
But at least, you know, not everything is bad, because ever since I started following you, and I realized, like many others, that you are a movie buff, you are a TV buff, but also you are a horror buff. And when I saw your review for Werewolf by Night, I said, man, this guy has been the happiest person right now.
I am.
Because it's been like, how long? The Blade movie was released in 1998 or 99, if I can remember.
Yeah, I think 98, yeah. And then we didn't have any comic book horror film until, I think, X-Men, The New Mutants, which I did not like personally. Honestly, it was a disappointment, but I understand. Look, I do understand production issues, but even when I review them, I'll mention them. It's just I have to review the work that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But like the latest one by Disney was like very nice. It paid homage to the old films, the monster movies in the 50s. And hey, like if there's an annual film like that, I love it. And they're very smart. They did it black and white. So the bloody scene, because they cannot show blood, and Disney.
Yeah.
So which was very smart. Like and I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a blast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now every one of us gets exposed to superheroes in a different way. You are a superhero fan because of the movies, cartoons, or comics? Because based on what I heard, it's mostly movies. But
movies and cartoons. Like, I mean, I love Superman so much, and Spider-Man are both my favorite characters of all time.
Right.
I love them on par. Somehow I talk about Superman more because I have that memory with my dad watching it as a kid. But like, I can see like a large part of my personality in these two characters, specifically Superman and Spider-Man. I watched the cartoons, and then the comics came. Like, I didn't tell this to anyone, honestly. My dad had, the old, I don't know if like the old days, they were like comic books in Arabic. So Majalladat. Yes. So like Clark Kent, his name was in Arabic, Nabil Fawzi. Yes. Lois Lane, her name is Randa. So I read those in Arabic. Like where he would fight with Brainiac, where he would fight Lex Luthor. His name in Arabic was, I forgot. And my dad had those.
Right.
And then we had to rebuild our home, and he just lost the whole thing. So I read them as a kid.
Right.
And that actually helped me reading. But then like, and then my dad was very like, let's say cautious. And then went to tell me like, hey, this is the Arabic version. The name in Arabic. And then this is in English. So you need to understand the difference. And for a while, it was a little bit different for me to see Superman as Clark Kent, because to me, Superman was Nabil Fawzi. And my head, like as a kid, and then gradually, the Arabic thing went away and just stuck with Clark Kent. So yeah,
it reminded me of a slight altercation I had with my class fellow. He bought a Superman comic and he brought it in class. And this is a very conservative 80s era where you could not bring anything from the outside. And then now I did the effort back in the 80s, thanks to my parents, to get the English comic books.
All right.
Now, the altercation we had was that while we are discussing, I'm saying Clark Kent, he's saying Nabil Fawzi. And then me and him, we're saying, no, this guy's name is Clark Kent. He says, la, Nabil Fawzi.
Nabil Fawzi.
So it was truly something. But Mohammed, here's the thing. I have noticed through my personal observation, I might be wrong. But Bahrain, compared to Saudi Arabia, has had a very rich relationship with comic books. Is that true?
Saudi in comparison to Bahrain, like in terms of people?
Yeah, the people like, because I came across some collectors in Bahrain, they have comics as far back as 1960s, and not just one guy. I mean, like bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, as well, like keep in mind, like why it's more, I mean, I agree, like it's more in Bahrain, and I think it's growing in Saudi, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, like in Bahrain, it's just, I think, a cultural thing. Bahrain was a little bit more open to certain things, like music, like movies, like having cinemas. And, so we were exposed to these things at a younger age, and people can collect them. I think Saudi, for a long period of time, I would say they didn't get access to those certain things. I noticed one thing in Saudi, that the anime fans, people who like Japanese anime, are way more than Bahrain, like crazy big. But in Bahrain, I would say with the comics, yeah, like even like
yes,
you've been to Bahrain before.
Twice. But I mean, the difference that I see between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia is that, like you mentioned, the Majalladat. The Majalladat were very popular here because Saudi Arabia was getting superhero content in Arabic because of close proximity to Egypt
to Egypt, yeah,
and as well as Kuwait and Dubai as well. But in Bahrain, what I noticed was that people who grew up in the earlier decades, they were having more access to the English comics that went back all the way to, like,
I mean, in Sugbanama, there are many places, but honestly, like, I would not disagree there, but maybe my personal experience, my dad got them mostly in Arabic because He had them for a very long time. I kid you not, we can sell those for at least $5,000 per mujallad, but they were all lost. I kid you not. I kid you not. One time we told someone we had those. He says, I'm gonna buy them. But in Bahrain, from my childhood, I got the Arabic ones, but then probably like around 94, 95, I remember like if I'm not mistaken, the X-Men House of M.
House of M 2005.
No. Then House of something. What was before? I forgot.
Or was it Age of Apocalypse?
It was like very thin. And my friend Hamid has them.
Right.
They were all in English, honestly, from Souk Manama. And that's how I got introduced to X-Men, but through the comics. So I would say, yeah, probably for us, easier to get in English. Yeah. But my childhood was mostly Arabic. Yeah.
Okay. But your childhood was mostly Arabic, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Now, one of the things that I have noticed when I am watching your reviews is the fact that you, while before the recording began, you mentioned that you get a lot of hate from DC fans.
Yeah.
Okay. This question might be a bit touchy, so please brace yourselves.
All right.
In best movies, top 15 movies of 2021.
Oh, dear Lord. All right.
Snyder Cut was number 1.
Yes.
And I remember you saying that you watched the Snyder Cut 10 times.
Yeah, now reached to 16 times. Yeah.
Mabruk.
Thank you.
Waiting for the Silver Jubilee 25. Okay. So why is the audience thinking of you in this way when somebody like you who appreciated Snyder Cut tremendously to the extent that you had that movie listed as number 1 in the top 15 listing of yours,
and I made other videos about it as well,
and you made other videos about it as well, and now exclusively to Superheroes of Arabia podcast, you have disclosed that you have watched it 16 times.
Until now, yes.
Until now. So where do you feel as a creator the gap is existing between your audience and yourself, that they think of you as a Marvel guy, not as a DC guy?
Okay. Like the audience, like from the get-go, they always knew that I liked Superman and Spider-Man and everything. Then with the DC thing that happened and the friction happened with Justice League. Look, the first Justice League, I enjoyed it. And it was fun. But I did not understand what happened. The first Justice League 2017, to be fair, I watched it in cinema probably 6 times.
Okay.
And then by the third time, I was like, why do I like it less than the first time? And then I realized the complication that happens. And then I was vocal about wanting to see the vision of Zack Snyder for these characters, because keep in mind, I'll talk specifically about Batman and Superman.
Okay.
Superman, I've seen so many films, the Christopher Reeves one, even the old TV shows. I watched certain episodes of it. I watched Smallville to a certain extent, and I got bored. Forgive me, guys, but I got bored of it. I watched Superman Returns, which was directed by Bryan Singer and starring Brandon Routh in 2006, and I enjoyed it.
Right.
But then Man of Steel came. It was refreshing. It was different. You know, I will give you a pass to portray a character differently if you gave me 5 movies before that, to a certain extent, balance the comics, not fully, to a certain extent, with a certain look. Man of Steel came, and I was like, I remember watching it in the cinemas. I was like, that felt different. That felt realistic. That felt somehow like the Dark Knight of Nolan movies. And at the same time, I can believe this Superman exists. Then BVS came, the Ultimate Edition, which I made a video about in my channel defending this film, the 3 hours cut. And I do understand it's for a specific niche of people.
Right.
I understand people didn't like it. I was defending it because I really liked what Snyder trying to do. So the DC fans, the fandom of DC, a big chunk of it went to support the Snyder cut.
Right.
And as well, a big chunk of it went to they want to see DC movies and similar formula of Marvel's.
Right.
Now, for me, in my head, I have 2 things going on.
Right.
The movie reviewer part, what I want to have an enjoyable cinematic experience where Marvel perfected their formula up to, let's say up to Spider-Man No Way Home.
Right.
They perfected their formula. It works wonderfully.
Right.
I did not love every film that they released,
Mhm.
but there are certain films where, mashallah, spectacular masterpieces.
Right.
Now, why do I want to see the same formula for the characters of DC? So that's in my head.
Right.
So like, okay. So, and at the same time, I liked what Snyder did. And I will have to be honest with you, before him releasing the film, you know, I was fighting to watch this, release the Snyder cut, release it. And while watching the film, I got an access to watch it earlier on.
Mhm.
And I told myself, and wallah al-azim, Allah knows this, if the movie sucks, if the movie is terrible, I'm gonna say it. And I know I might lose a big chunk of my subscribers, but I will never lose my integrity to myself. I will always say the truth. And I remember telling this to my cousin. He was like, no, I think you'll like it, because my cousin is a DC fanboy. I was like, no, I have to say the truth. Watched it. And for me to watch a film that's 4 hours long, but felt like a 2 hour long, but I felt satisfied, fulfilled, emotional, a wide range of emotion. I swear to God, the same feeling I got while watching Endgame. While, you know, like Endgame, the climax of Marvel, I got that's totally different films, different style of directing, different feeling.
Right.
But at the end, the core satisfaction is the same. So I just loved it. And then even when I said number one, many people attacked me. Spider-Man No Way Home should be first. No, you just love Zack Snyder. Suicide Squad should be there on the top 10. You're not a cinephile. You like comic book. And some people loved it. Don't get me wrong. Some people were happy for it. But at the same time, I think people forget that I will always support a good film, even if the film cannot defend itself at the time being.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that certain movies get misunderstood at the time they were released, and give them some time, they'll be appreciated. A big example of this is The Shining for Stanley Kubrick, which was based on the Stephen King novel and it came in the 80s,
right,
which won award for worst film ever.
Right.
Now it's being taught in universities about how to make a horror film. So I that's how I feel like with Snyder work. And people think like I love everything that Zack Snyder does. But and hey, spoiler alert, he did not make a bad movie yet for me. He made some great films, but he's still not as great as Nolan, but he's still a very good director. So this polarity is just, I'm in between. Like, and I swear to God, every film that I release, every review I release about a comic book movie, I get nervous. Like even for Black Adam, which I did not expect I'm gonna like. I liked it. I was like, oh my God, now the Snyder fans might hate me, but alhamdulillah, nothing happened. Okay. And so in a nutshell, I know this is a long answer. It's just people associate me with Zack Snyder mostly, and some associate me with DC. And people, I would say 80% of my followers believe I hate Marvel, but I have reviews and videos. Clearly, I made a video about the 25-minute video about Endgame. I made 2 videos about Spider-Man. I talked about Loki and Wanda, and I talked about Shang-Chi. And hey, they were all positive reviews. But then they would say, you did not like Eternals, you did not like Thor, you did not like Doctor Strange. That makes you a DC agent. So and keep in mind, I know comic book fans are so passionate. Yeah. That's the thing. So passionate. If I see a review about a film that I love and the other guy, especially comic book movie, especially. And I liked, he didn't like, I was like, hey, like, what's wrong with you, dude? Like, why are you so harsh on the film? Like in my head. Mm-hmm. So I understand the polarity of it. It's just becomes too heavy because even like in Comic-Con Bahrain, people just come to me and will say like, I think you were too harsh on Thor. I say, I explained why I was too harsh, but keep in mind, I love the previous Thor and I love the first Thor and I like Guardians of the Galaxy 1. I was like, no, you were too harsh. And then why? And then I can sense aggression is coming my way. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm here just to have fun. And then he just like, I think, and then they would always say this to me, and I will not mention the name of that person, but they say, you know what? I think you should learn how to review movies from that person. And I tell the guy, like, you know what? There's 350 videos on my channel in the last 5 years.
Right.
Thanks. I have a lot to learn. Thank you. So, yeah.
Okay. I think that the main, it's like you are a very transparent person who believes in integrity. And sometimes, the pressure succumbs to you to a certain extent that how would fans feel.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, I don't have to deal with that. Why? Because I have one ace in my hand.
What is that? One ace in your hand?
Have you ever read comics about Thor? Have you ever read comics about World's Finest? And then when they say no, I said, read the comics and then watch my review, and then you'll know where I'm standing.
Okay.
So, because what I have noticed is that the good thing about the cinematic universes is the fact that it broadened the base of superhero fans. In your childhood, my childhood, the only way we could become superhero fans was either the comics or the cartoons, or the very few superhero movies that were released not as a part of a
universe
strategy, a universe, if you will. But right now, what happens is that for today's generation, it's very convenient. They can just simply get up, go to the cinema, watch the movie, and then they form their judgment. For them, it's very difficult to believe that the Thor they are watching in Marvel Cinematic Universe has now, ever since Taika Waititi, what he did with Thor has nothing to do with what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had done with Thor in Marvel Comics. So it's kind of a rude awakening, but at least as somebody who is more centered on comics, I have made my mission that I encourage people to read comics as well as watch movies. And that gives me the ace that I always need whenever I'm coming across a similar situation as you are. Okay, Mohamed, you have been labeled as the Marvel guy. You have been labeled or accused of being the agent for DC. But am I correct to ask you that Spider-Man No Way Home is your highest ranked superhero movie, the rating that you gave 9 out of 10?
No. For Marvel or for DC?
Both.
The highest ranking I gave, which was for Marvel, Endgame, a 10 out of 10.
You gave it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So like Justice League, Zack Snyder Justice League, I gave it 9.5, and then after watching so many times, became a 10. Right. Infinity War was 9.5. Spider-Man No Way Home is a 9. Right. But the movie that I gave a 10, the first rating, and I still love it, and I still watched. I watched Endgame probably like now 8 times.
Right.
Was Endgame, and you can find that on the channel. Yeah. I'm not a Marvel agent. I'm not a DC. I love DC. It's just people forget those things, People just forget.
Yeah, and to all of those who are listening to this podcast, to all of those who are watching this podcast, it has been laid out in the open. He has given 10 to Endgame, but he has also given 10 to Snyder Cut.
But that's after. But the first rating was 9.5, and then became a 10. But I'm always fair, and I'll always say this. And this is a very interesting topic when we mention Endgame and Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
People always telling me hey, you're telling me that Snyder Cut is better than Endgame. I say no, even though I love the Snyder Cut. We cannot compare them both. I can compare the Snyder Cut with the first Avengers in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, which I loved. Joss Whedon did a great job in that film. I'll give credit when it's due. I can compare them to those two films, but Endgame, you cannot compare it to anyone because it's the climax of multiple films, 10 years in the making.
Right.
Our journey as watchers, as fans, is totally different than the Snyder Cut because, bro, we were just waiting for that moment to beat Thanos, and that's different. So that's the truth. Yeah.
Okay. I want you to be very comfortable in answering the other question.
Sure.
It is my opinion, and it's my opinion only, that whenever people have a lot of issues, I don't do reviews as much as you do. I only do reviews where I feel something needs to be communicated to the community. But when people have issues with me concerning a DC or a Marvel film, I always tell them, look, for me, the template for the best superhero movie all time, and it's a trilogy, it's Christopher Nolan. Why is that?
Yeah.
Because Christopher Nolan is a guy who has zero background in comics. But when he was given the assignment to do a trilogy for Batman, he actually did the hard work of studying the character from A to Z as much as he can, along with his cast.
And he had good writers, to be frank. He had David S. Goyer, which was and then his brother came along, and which is very great. But yeah, true. I have no doubt in that.
But remember, David S. Goyer was also the writer for Green Lantern.
Well, yes. All right. Yes. But what if I tell you, the Green Lantern is not as terrible as people think? It's not a great film. Honest to God, it's not a great film.
Yeah.
But in truth, with someone having a ring with aliens and stuff, they did an okay job. It was an okay film. The reason people hated it more because Ryan Reynolds was very vocal about it. That was why. It's not great. It's like really, I would not even call it good cinema, but it wasn't as terrible as people say, to me personally, honestly.
Okay. But now, as somebody who is a student of cinema, because I am not a student of cinema, you are a student of cinema. You understand the dynamics of the storytelling that are required within a movie, the limitations that are there and everything. Is it fair to say that the best template for a superhero movie is Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, or the
Avengers?
And I wouldn't say Avengers, but Richard Donner's Superman 1, Superman 2. I mean, the superhero storytelling, which one would that be?
That's a very interesting question, mashallah. It's a very tough answer for me. Of course, the complexities or the issues that Donner faced with Superman 2, when there were, there's a different cut which was released many years later on, which Donner. I love. Yes, which I love, honestly. I would say, of course, Nolan's different time. Warner Brothers are known for many years to have interfered, but Nolan is their golden boy and have found a way to balance it. So I would say mostly with the Dark Knight trilogy. And I keep in mind, I think, look, Batman Begins is a great film, but I think The Dark Knight, he was very lucky with The Dark Knight, especially having a great performance by Heath Ledger.
Right.
And that was just one of the, basically, I would say, the incredible highlights of, DC films in general.
Right.
But I think this, my favorite comic book movie of all time is The Dark Knight Rises. This is my number one film of all time. Yeah. But so I would go with Nolan because, look, I always say it's a little bit interesting, a little bit difficult to start a trilogy, to lay the foundation.
Right.
Fine. And it's not, and he did that with Batman Begins. And I watched it in the cinema in 2005 or 4, probably 4 times. I loved it. Mm-hmm. When you have a trilogy, the second film is usually the easiest part for you because just the bridge to the end. And he was incredibly amazing in it. And he was, again, lucky with an amazing performance of Heath Ledger. And the way the script is written, it makes you as a watcher dissect it and analyze it from different angles. That's why you see a lot of videos on YouTube dissecting and saying, did the Joker actually save the city? Was he correct? Did the Joker do what Batman couldn't do? And from both angles, you can say yes and no. And that's great. But I don't think, honestly, that was the intention of the writers of the second film. Right. But again, cinema makes you talk. Dark Knight Rises for me, and this is when things get scary, it's very difficult to end a trilogy. Very difficult to end a trilogy where people have attachments to 2 films.
Right.
You end it with a way that is incredibly satisfying, but you say, you know what? He ended it in a way at the end, is he alive or dead? People say he's alive. I say he's alive. Is he alive or dead? Secondly, is he going to come back? Thirdly, is there a Robin? But even there are no more movies, I am incredibly happy with The Dark Knight Rises. And keep in mind, Nolan had to do certain deals with Warner Brothers because he wanted to make Inception. He wanted to make other films. And Inception back then was a very difficult film to make because the idea was a little bit crazy. And I love Inception. Right. But so back to the main question, I would choose the template of the Dark Knight trilogy. I think there were less interference. I even made 3 videos called What You Don't Know About These Films, And even though there were interferences, but Nolan knew how to tackle them, and he was very smart. Where other movies, whether Snyder's or Donner's, they had so many interferences, so the formula was not fully correct. So I'll go to Dark Knight trilogy, or like for superhero movies, there are trilogies.
There are trilogies, but not others.
Not others. Others, I would be completely frank with you, it's Marvel, hands down.
Hands down, even with all the jingoism that goes in and the.
I mean, look, I would say, like, first of all, when you make a movie about Iron Man, which I did not even like the character, because I knew certain things from the cartoon, and it was a really good film. Mm-hmm. And the way that you make them, you can introduce me new characters, and then I want to watch. And even if I don't like the film, it's just how you can pull the audience to watch the next film is incredibly brilliant. The way they built the entire Infinity Saga is, to me, still remarkable. Even though there are so many movies in between, I'm like, for example, like Captain Marvel was just a money grab, a cash grab, because it was just, situated or located right before Endgame, which was, to me, it was a mediocre film, and people still think I'm too harsh on it. It's just, it had so many things I just did not appreciate, and I knew, hands down, this could have been one of the greatest films in Marvel. Right. But again, they're just very smart in terms of marketing, and as well, you need to make the audience interested. So in terms of making an extended universe, extended world, Marvel. If you're just going to make a trilogy, it's just The Dark Knight. Sony tried with Spider-Man of, the Tobey Maguire ones, Sam Raimi's, which, hey, like, I loved Spider-Man 1 and 2. Spider-Man 2, to me, is one of the greatest comic book sequels of all time, hands down. And I will always defend this film, no matter what happens. A great villain, a heartfelt story, great ending. Spider-Man 3, I made a video about it. The level of interference from Sony was just insane. So if they let the guy do whatever he wanted, we could have a great trilogy. We had great 2 films, and the third one was not bad, was fun, was okay. I even talked about them. Okay.
So this is possibly a very refreshing take, because I am getting to understand the dynamics of superhero movies, because for me, the bitter struggle that I have every time a superhero movie comes across is that when I start watching it and I see something happening and I'm like, kidda. Because my instant reaction is that this is not the character I read about in the comics. Mm-hmm. So, but from a movie goer's, movie buff standpoint, the way you have analyzed the dynamics of storytelling and all these things, this has been, I would say, something very enlightening. And I'm hoping that people who are going to be watching this, listening to it, they find it really insightful. And especially next time when they watch superhero movies, they view it through that same particular approach.
I just would like to add to that part. It's just, I try as much as I can as to, when I review a superhero film, I first of all, I ask myself, so what's the movie trying to be? What's the movie trying to be? For example, Man of Steel, to a certain extent, it tried to be Dark Knight, but wearing a red cape. If you really watch them. Right. So it's tried to be this, like, a little bit dark, deep, humane film. So I treat the film that way. Now we go to, let's say, hypothetically, one of my favorite Marvel movies is Captain America: Winter Soldier. I love that film. Right. The way the film it was presented itself to me, it's mostly like a spy movie, espionage movie. Like, you don't know who's in Hydra, you don't know. So I treat the film the way it's trying to tell me. That's how I am. Because, if I'm going to review all superhero movies, like I'm reviewing the Dark Knight trilogy, then Habibi, every other movie is terrible. I'll give Endgame a 7 out of 10 because, hey, it's not artistic like the Dark Knight, and that's not fair. This would kill me. I cannot do that to a comic book movie. The same way I reviewed, for example, Black Adam, which I know many people didn't like it because they say it's this, that, but the movie from the get-go, it tried to present itself like, hey, I am not like other movies in DC, and I'm not like other movies in Marvel. I'm something in between. And look, superhero movies usually have a similar problem. The problem is always with the third act. the final act of the film, which is how you're going to wrap up the whole story.
Yeah.
Black Adam has the same problem, honestly.
And do you feel the Batman by Matt Reeves also faced the same problem? You mentioned a very important part.
Yeah, Batman, Matt Reeves. Look, the Batman for Matt Reeves, and I know people will shoot me for this. It's the most artistic Batman movie that's ever made.
Right.
It's Oscar worthy, in my opinion, in terms of filmmaking.
Right.
In terms of filmmaking, the way it's made, it can go to the Oscars. If Black Panther went to the Oscars, so
this movie deserves more to be there.
This, and I love Black Panther. Don't get me wrong; it's like a wonderful film. I loved it so much.
Right.
It's just but the Batman faced a combination of things. The fans being angry that Ben Affleck is not there. The fans that are angry with Warner Brothers. The fans loving the Snyder Cut, getting a high rating. And then we see a movie that reminds us Ben Affleck will not be there. Now, we go now here to company politics, which Warner Brothers were not, let's say, the smartest people on how to tackle it. I think now they're very smart with the whole multiverse thing, but it's a little bit too late. So that's what with comic book movies, so many, and as well, the Batman as well face comparisons with the Dark Knight trilogy. Yes. And I always tell people, and I say this, you want to compare the Batman, compare it to Batman Begins. You can compare it to Batman Begins,
right?
But you cannot compare to the Dark Knight because, let's be fair, it's going to be a trilogy. So compare part one with part one, and they're totally different. And you keep in mind, like even the Matt Reeves Batman is more of a detective story. And we know that Batman is a detective, but this one had something that they call like a film noir kind of feeling of like, like you are with the character investigating, even though you know who's the villain from the trailers, you still have that kind of an interest. And the way it's just been made in terms of cinematography, in terms of dialogue, in terms of acting, in terms of music, it was just breathtaking. The ending of the film when they're on the motorcycle and we see Catwoman, Selena Kyle leaving, and looking at his face, I kid you not, I got goosebumps. Like, this film deserves to be in the Oscars. But I don't think it will go because it's firstly a comic book movie. Yeah. If it does not serve a certain minority in America, it might not go. Yeah. I'm not saying that Black Panther went there because it talks about the African culture. Yeah. Fully, it's a good film, but we should give a chance to the Batman because the Joker went to the Oscars. But as well, the Joker's talked about social issues. But like, if I'm going to talk artistic, it's just the Batman. So the Batman is a victim of many things. Like, fans. Yeah. Sorry. It's a long answer, but yeah.
No, but that long answer actually led me to something.
Yeah. What is this?
Logan.
Oh, I love this.
Artistically,
wonderful.
As a superhero movie.
Yes.
What is Mohamed Fareed's opinion on that part? Because you have shared a lot of interesting points, which people who are not movie buffs, they often ignore them. For example, you said that the biggest challenge for a trilogy is how you end the trilogy.
Of course.
Then you also mentioned that in a movie, the third act is always the bigger challenge.
For superhero movies is how the third act is where always the problems are. And certain movies were very good with the third act, especially the Avenger movies. I would say Avenger 1, not Age of Ultron, Avenger 1, Infinity War, Endgame. And then the certain movies in Marvel, Winter Soldier was great, the third act, and as well Civil War. And there are other films. But like other typical superhero movies like Thor, I would say, or Captain America 1, you would have issue with the third act is just the way you wrap it up. It's very difficult because the writers always think of, I'm going to build, action. Then, hey, how am I going to close the film now? And I want to leave a cliffhanger for you so you want to watch the second one. And this part gets messy. Right. Where like Nolan movies and the Batman movies, the way they're written, it's like a full journey narrative. Like you go with the character. So you don't need to have that bombastic, crazy third act. You can have it, but you still emotionally, you feel like, whoa. Remember, like, for example, for Batman Begins, when Commissioner Gordon on the rooftop shows Batman a card of the Joker. Yeah. And before that was the train thing with the Ra's al Ghul and everything. The movie, the way it's structured, it just went through hell. Then reached to the third act. It feels kind of smooth and fun, where you can watch Green Lantern, for example, The third act, to me, is like one of the worst third acts for superhero movies because it just was messy. It was all over the place. Right. And that's a problem. I get it. Look, it's at the end of the day, it's just they need to make money. So back to Logan.
Yeah.
Logan was different than Wolverine X-Men Origins and the Wolverine. Let's leave the X-Men, the prequels, and the Bryan Singer ones and Brett Ratner ones. The way it was processed and the way it was handled, it was very similar to the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix
Joker.
Yeah, it was a dramatic processing, right, or dramatic treatment of the character, where you just basically take off the superhero suit and you just treat that character as a person. That's why the movie called Logan, not the Wolverine, because hey, I am talking to that person. That's why Joker, even though the movie called Joker, but hey, I'm talking about Arthur Fleck. So that humanization of the character makes the film different. So when people watch Logan, and I remember vividly, it was 2016 or 17, people did not like it because, hey, that's not my Wolverine. He's just old and talks too much. And there's this little chick, the little girl. I don't really care. I want him just slicing things up. No, it took a very humane approach. There is action. Yeah. And the way you just ended the film, you as a viewer, even for Joker and Logan, with similar treatment, you just put your hand on your chest and you say, okay, that was a journey. That was a film. I'm not talking about drama. I'm just about talking about the treatment of those characters, how you humanize them, how you can make that, Logan, that lived so much, who is semi-immortal, just been through hell. And we've seen so many movies. How are you going to end a great character like that? With Logan. And that was very smart. So yeah.
Beautifully explained. I sure hope that people understand the complexities that are involved, because I can't thank you enough for explaining it to all of us in the most simplified way. Because believe me, I have learned a great deal from you in this particular session, because my knowledge when it comes to movies is next to zero.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to superhero movies, because in superhero movies, my only knowledge kicks in is like, okay, they took the reference from this comic, they took the reference from that story. This thing is inspired from that page. This is something I know about. But the journey, the word that you used for a particular character and how it needs to start and how it needs to reach the climax and how it needs to end from a cinematic standpoint, I can't thank you enough that my audiences are going to be finding this really, really insightful. And I hope that it changes the way they view superhero movies from this point onwards. Just one public service announcement. Don't watch Black Adam review by Mohamed Fareed until and unless you have watched the movie itself.
Yes. There's no spoilers. Just you watch the film, then we can discuss.
Great thing. Okay. Mohamed, before we close, I just want to ask you, where do you get these awesome superhero t-shirts, man?
Okay, that will be considered like an ad. It's just, okay. I actually, for example, this t-shirt I'm wearing, can you read it like
running up that hill. Running up that
things.
Okay.
Yeah, Stranger Things. Yeah, I don't know. Like my best friend usually like surprise me and buys them online. Sometimes I get my t-shirts from Virgin Megastore. I'm actually designing now my own t-shirt line and my own website for t-shirts. So so mostly I get them from Virgin Megastore. I just go there and just see whatever I like. And I as well at Comic-Con, I bought a couple of t-shirts. I mean, wearing a black, and people say, just don't wear black because it's too depressing. I say, no, like I think the logo will look much better on black t-shirts. I love them. And I have a lot of t-shirts. I kid you not, like a lot, and I don't wear them as much as I do. It's just at the same time, I try to distinct myself from other film reviewers, because like you said, my YouTube journey, it wasn't the easiest. Honest to God, like it was the most, I would say the most painful journey ever, because, I faced so many difficulties, so many comparisons with other people that I respect. And you know how it is, like when you come onto the scene and they say, oh, you're trying to be like this reviewer, you're trying to be like this. And then this, with time, it just kind of hits your heart. And then I say to myself, I should have canceled I kid you not, I was going to close my channel in 2020. before COVID, like by 1 month, I was going to cancel everything. I was just going to close it. I just couldn't take it anymore. And then COVID happens. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just try to stay a little bit. And then just subhanAllah, like I survived COVID, with no movies. I survived. And here I am today. I mean, like I say this because anyone who's trying to do a YouTube channel, hey, it's not easy. Don't think about the views. Just consistency is really is the key. You just got to keep on going. You take whatever feedback that you get, take the positive outcome from it. If you can do it, if you think you can do those changes, do it. If not, just leave it be. Khalas. And I always say this: avoid any conflict in social media.
True.
That's what I say. If you have any issue with anyone, don't let it be public. Be a man or be a woman. Solve it privately, or just don't even talk about it. That's what I did. And honestly, I faced so many issues for things I did not even know about, which pushed me to that crazy decision to cancel everything. But alhamdulillah, I did not do it. And then just we pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed.
Well, so, yeah. You heard it. We all came close to losing movie Convo by Mohamed Fareed in 2020. But it serves us, all of us, a very important lesson that quite a lot of times in our lives, we reach a very low point.
Yeah.
And we think that maybe ending it is by giving up.
Yes. Like you say, always think like, why the headache? Leave it be. They don't want you. Nobody cares. Like you get these thoughts, but then subhanAllah, like if you have a good night's sleep, things change, at times, like, yeah.
A very inspiring story, a very enlightening interview, a very thought-provoking discussion.
No, thank you, Allah. It's my honor to be here. You are just one of the kindest and sweetest guys I met in Comic-Con Arabia. Let's do this again. I mean, like, I hope we can have a discussion when the big film that comes, like, I just love meeting beautiful minds, and you're one of those people. It's been an absolute pleasure to record this podcast with you. And inshallah, next time we can stay even for 3 hours and talk. I mean, I don't mind, man. Like I'm open to it. As long as we schedule for it properly, I don't mind.
Perfect from my side.
Okay.
It's something that I would definitely love because thank you for the kind words. But the reason is that you come across good individuals is because you yourself are a good individual. It's like you're attracting like-minded individuals, people with similar energies. And I think, we are blessed in Saudi Arabia, in the GCC, to have you as someone who is talking about our passion. Because I personally was very frustrated for all those decades that the superhero community was tremendously ignored. In this
well, not ignored anymore. Like here, mashallah, like I feel like it's growing much more.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. And thanks to especially thanks to people like you, because your reviews have been very insightful. Your reviews have been very informative. But today, what we have been able to hear from you has been amazing.
Thank you, Allah. Thank you. So I just can't wait to see this video, actually, how it turns out at the end. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. I would as well, like, I would just say, I know that you love superhero movies and you love comic book movies as well. Watch other kind of movies, cinema, generally speaking, is just a wonderful world you can escape into.
True.
True. So just give chance as well to horror films, huh? Please. I
will, because I hope that what I am working on comes to fruition. Because one of the things that I am struggling with these days is to be able to find time for the pop culture genre in its entirety and the cinema itself. But taking your advice, I definitely give you my word that I'm also going to be exploring other genres as well. And based on your special request, the horror genre as well.
Yes. And I have just one last question for you. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No.
But what are your top 5 superhero movies of all time?
Oh, man.
I know. And if you're going to choose the Dark Knight trilogy, that's only one, because like a trilogy together. So you got to give me 5.
That's the toughest spot I've been in a long time. Okay. Superman 1, because it shattered the barrier that a superhero movie with a massive budget cannot be made. It was made. It would not be hit because it's too childish. No, it was a super hit. So Superman 1 is there. Second, for me, is Nolan's Dark Knight.
Okay.
It's very difficult for me. And of course, you've given me the luxury that if I choose Nolan's trilogy, that would be counted as one.
Yeah.
But I feel it would be dishonest from my side that I do not highlight Dark Knight as number 2.
Sure.
Number 3, it's a tie.
Okay.
It's going to be Logan and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock.
Very nice.
So we have 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 4 and 5, I would say very difficult. I think I'll put Joaquin Phoenix Joker and Avengers Infinity War.
Infinity War, not Endgame, huh? All right. Respect.
Because Infinity War, I don't appreciate comedic puns. A lot of comedic puns in a story which is very, very intense. Infinity War was the best balance. In Avengers Endgame, even though the climax scene, the Armageddon between Thanos and the heroes is like, khalas, it's my all-time favorite scene.
With the music.
With the music, exactly. But I would have to put Avengers Infinity War.
All right, fair enough. I understand. Cool, thanks. And sorry to put you on the spot. Now you know how I feel when I make the annual video of the best 15 movies ever. That's how I feel every time.
Continue.
No, like for example, like this year, like someone in Comic-Con told me, like, Muhammad, please don't put the Batman as number 1 this year, because it'll be official. 2019 is the Joker. Last year's Zack Snyder Justice League, and this year's the Batman is officially your DC agent. And I'm like, oh my god. Imagine me having this in my mind while doing the video. So you know how I feel now.
And I could judge from your facial expression when you were about to name Zack Snyder's Justice League as number 1 in your top 50.
Oh yeah. Last year, imagine, it was like, oh, so this is number 1 now. Oh my lord. It is like, well, like, I even like one of my cousins telling me, he was telling me like this, like his face, like, are you crazy? It's like, why? It's like, you're gonna put this movie as number 1? Just try to put something that's non-comic book related as number 1. And I say, no, I gotta be true to myself. Like, I can't, because if I do, because let's say hypothetically, if I do what he says, me knowing me, I'll make another video apologizing for that video. I was like, I don't want to go through that. I'll just stay true to myself. I'll just put it, and I didn't. I was like, but anyway, for this year, I don't know if the Batman is going to be number 1, but it's definitely my top 5. And I will always support comic book movies, good comic book movies, like strong ones. And just one last reminder for anyone watching comic book movies: try to understand what's the movie's trying to be like. It's trying to be artistic, like Joker or Dark Knight or the Batman, or trying to be fun, like Black Adam, like maybe Thor 1 and Thor 3. You have to understand what you're getting for you, because, you cannot, for example, review a comedy thinking this comedy is going to be like The Godfather. It's not fair for the film. You cannot, you know what I mean? You got to be aware. But still, certain people don't understand that. It will take them time, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. Really, really delight to have you on our episode, and inshallah, more to come. And some lengthier discussions in depth. I cannot thank you, Mohamed Fareed, enough for giving us, the superhero fans, the time and telling us about your journey, telling us about your entire discourse. We are extremely grateful to you.